BT Sport is one of the UK's biggest sports media organisations and broadcasters, and we have the rights to top tier rights like Champions League, Europa League, Premier League, but also other sports like MotoGP, boxing, UFC, tons of sports. And we do lots of live coverage. But what I want to get across today is that there are many sports, many skill sets and jobs within BT Sport and the sports sector that you don't have to be a presenter or a cameraman. There are hundreds of different roles. And we've got 3 different areas covered here with Sally, Sam, and Anissa. But an intro to myself. So I'm Rob, and I'm the managing editor for the BT Sport website and the apps. So everything you see on btsport.com or on the BT Sport app on your mobile, your tablet, or on your TV, your PlayStation or Xbox, is what my team look after. And that's live coverage, that's short videos, that's articles, that's kind of sales of BT Sport, that kind of thing. But yeah, do you guys want to introduce yourselves, what your job title is, what your area is? That would be really helpful. Sally, do you want to start?
Yes. Did you say Sally?
Yeah.
Sorry. Hello. I'm Sally, and I'm executive producer of BT Sport Films, which is our documentary strand of programming at BT Sport. So the long form, non-live side of things, sports stories, if you like. I didn't come through that area. I started in live sport at Sky Sports, and then when BT Sport launched, I was looking after the UFC, all the shoulder programming, which is what we call the program that sort of sits alongside the live output. We might call it support programming. And I have produced a live studio show, weekly studio show, where we would sort of discussion show, I guess, with demos and all sorts of things that supported that. And then we realised that the biggest audience really for UFC was more on a digital audience. So I sort of surrendered my budget more over to the digital space because it made more sense and was getting more engagement there. And I moved into the sort of non-live side of things. BT Sport Films have been running already, but it's sort of taken a bit of a dip. And there was only ever a film once in a while. So I said to the bosses, I think we're mad. This is a brand that people like and we had success with, but nobody's driving it. So I sort of said, I want to drive it. I think we can bring it in-house and make films for a lot less money. That was a bad thing to say. So ever since I've been making films for a lot less money. But we've basically brought the brand back to life, and we now generate about 6 to 8 films a year, and keep. So all the way through the year, BT Sport Films is a brand that the audiences will see, and they really engage with our stories. So that's mainly
when you say films, Sally, is it fair to say that it's kind of documentaries?
Yeah, documentaries. I think we thought it sounded fancy to call it BT Sport Films. But yes, they're the sort of high-end non-live programming. People often, you'll hear people sometimes call bits of television VTs or films, or people use different language, but basically we are documentary makers. And I also look after other sort of non-live stuff. So I might work in development or have people pitch ideas for, say, other non-live programs to BT Sport, which I look after. So I sort of commission stuff as well. So that's a very long-winded answer from me.
Oh, that's a good answer. Sam, so I guess you're also non-live in the majority of the work you do, but live is fundamentally what you are promoting, right?
Yes, and I run the promos team, head of promos, and when we think about a promo, whereas an advert promotes a product, a promo promotes a program. And so we are looking to promote a fixture, whether it be Arsenal versus Chelsea, or whether it be a competition, the Premier League is back, or the UFC 259 is coming. It can be anything like that across all our sports. And that can be a 30-second promo which sits next to the adverts within a commercial break, or we can start to think about things a little bit more cleverly when we put things into the program themselves and ask the presenters to talk over them in a live fashion. Just any way really that we can try and get the audience to engage when there's the most eyeballs watching the program with something else that's on the channel.
So I guess promos, just to be clear to everyone, is on our own channels, talking about other channels maybe, or programs that are upcoming. So it's not like advertising where it would be on different channels.
Yeah, exactly that. The majority of the stuff that we create is on BT Sport, or it's on the BT Sport digital or social platforms. And yeah, it's promoting the stuff that BT Sport already has. So, whereas our marketing team might put adverts out to people who don't have BT Sport yet already, we're trying to encourage people who are already BT Sport subscribers to watch another program on BT Sport, which is also a useful exercise in itself, because if you encourage people to watch more BT Sport, they're less likely to, we call it the word churn, they're less likely to leave BT Sport. So we're almost a retention tool for existing subscribers in what we promote and engage them in.
Okay, and then I did say that these were going to be varied job roles, which is what this is all about, right? Anissa, tell us a little bit about what your job title is, and a little bit about your role in your career.
Yep. So I'm Anissa. I work in the insight team. I would say, let's say research, just to make it sound normal. And I would say I'm like a support person, and I help different teams within BT Sport. So I look at kind of our audience figures. So look at what our programs, how many people are watching, how many people we reach. But then I can also help before we've actually put out a program and look at, for example, if we're looking to get a new sport onto our channel, I might support that team into giving numbers into how it performed on other channels, and if it will be beneficial to getting it to our channels. And I might help do ad hoc research. So I might help Sam, for example, see how our promos perform with like people outside of the team, and basically people who are BT Sport subscribers might look at them and see how they think of our channels in terms of actual opinions rather than just numbers. So a bit of both.
So some of it will be talking to people and getting data that way, and some of it will be looking at purely numbers, how many views something is, how many times something's been viewed, or how long something's been viewed for. Is that fair?
Yeah. So I'll give an example actually. So when we got the WWE onto the channel, a few months later I did a piece of work, looked at our viewing figures, so how many numbers we'd got compared to Sky, then also looked at kind of opinions of people. So we did a bit of focus groups, which is basically like a group of people in like a room, for example, and then we asked them certain questions about what they think of it, how they felt it changed from coming from Sky to our channels, and then I just put it all together and presented it back to the team.
Got you. And I guess all this information that you gather and share with different teams basically help other teams make decisions, right?
Yeah.
Using that data, whether it's we do more of something or we do less of something, or we change the time of something or anything like that. Yeah,
that's why I'd say support function, because quite often someone will come to me with a problem and a question and ask if I can give them data to support their problem or their question, and then I'll try and figure something out to kind of give it to them.
Got you. So what I guess following on from that, Annie, so what kind of skills would you say are important to do your role or a role within your team?
I would say you need to be able to write. So I don't mean write essays or anything like that, nothing at all, but picking out key insights from what your numbers show. So kind of problem solving and looking at like key trends and just seeing what the numbers show you. You need to put that into words. And I'd say you need to know your kind of PowerPoint and Excel should be your best friends, really. I'd say.
Well, I was going to say, it's funny that you said the first thing you said was words, because in my head, all the problems that I come to you with, I was like, can you help me out on Excel? Can you help me out with these numbers type thing? So in my head, it was numbers would be the number one thing for your role.
Yeah, I would say numbers, but I didn't want to, I'm quite biased because I enjoy doing the numbers. So I wanted to, so it's a bit of both. But I wouldn't say you have to be like an expert at Excel, but I'd say you need to be able to at least enjoy it. There's no point if you hate it completely. There's no point of you coming into the role at all.
But I guess Excel is like anything. Like you can be self-taught in Excel, really.
You can, yeah. So quite often my colleagues will come to me and be like, "Do you know how to do this?" And I won't know, but I'll Google it myself and I'll find out. So they might not know.
So is that what you do every time I ask you? You're just Googling it.
Yours quite basic, not gonna lie. It's quite basic for me. But other people, they might come to me and I'll be like, yeah, I'll figure it out. And because I enjoy learning new things off of Excel, I'll be like, yeah, let me learn this and I'll come back to you. So you can self-teach it, Google and YouTube and like all these, like there's so many resources out there that you can just use yourself.
Got you. Okay. And how about you, Sally? I mean, doesn't have to be your role, but maybe one of the producers in your team or whatever. What kind of skill sets do you think they require at a kind of junior level?
Well, for my team, they do need to be able to write, and really, it's kind of journalistic in a way. I mean, when I came through the producer route, and I started at Sky as a junior, and then I was an assistant producer, and then you get to producer. So, and when you're a producer, really, it's all about the editorial and managing, the moment that you come on air to the moment you come off air, and everything, that all the content and the journey that viewer is going to go on to get from A to Z. You're in charge. You might not be in charge of what it looks like, but you're certainly in charge of the story that you're telling. So when it comes to being a non-live thing, when it's a documentary, again, you're telling a story and you're responsible for getting that viewer to go on a journey from the beginning to the end and to have had an experience where, so, documentaries do have sort of basic structures, 3 acts, and you're generally sort of heading to a peak and then you're coming back down. You need a beginning, a middle and an end. So really it's sort of, thinking back to...
Oh, she's frozen.
You're just getting to the good bit as well.
Stories.
You're back. Don't worry. Carry on. We lost you for a couple of seconds.
Oh, sorry. It's going to
Carry
happen. It's really annoying, Zoom, isn't it? Especially in my house. But yes, so it's all about the storytelling. Being able to tell a story, even though we say long form, and our films might be an hour or say up to 80 minutes. It's amazing how many people find it difficult to tell their story in that much time, because it's tempting to just keep going and going and going, and then you lose your audience. So although it's a long form thing, it's really about getting the key points and making sure you don't lose them at any point, because like Sam says, we need to retain our viewers. We need to find a way, especially for a long piece of content, it's quite a skill to make sure that they want to stay with you on that journey, that within the first 5 minutes they are sold and they're not going anywhere, and that then you continue to give them and feel like we talk about going on a journey, because generally you do feel that you need to take people, they need to feel like they've learned something and they've moved on, and then they've carried on, and then they've carried on. And a lot of people who make documentaries don't really think that way, and they're thinking about quite a linear process and go, well, I'm going to tell them that, and then that happened, and then that happened, and then that happened, and that happened. And that can be quite formulaic. So, for people, it's finding an interesting way of telling a story to keep your audience engaged for that full editorial. It's quite a skill, actually. So people might come not necessarily from the most sporting backgrounds to tell long form documentaries, because actually, for me, what's more important is that you can tell a story, and that the vehicle is sport, but actually it's the people who tell the best stories. So Isabel, one of my directors who works in the team, isn't a sport nut. She's come through a sports background, but she's not an absolute fanatic, but she just knows how to tell a great story. She knows how to engage an audience, and it happens to be through sport. So it's really useful to have a mixed team, actually. You've got your sports nuts who can really help draw out those great sports stories, but it's understanding how to tell a human interest story, for me, that gets the best, you get the best product.
There's so many good films that you guys have done, and other documentaries from other makers that, even if you're not a sports fan, you watch and you follow because you like the story, and you kind of empathize with or hate the person who's kind of the key member of the story. What about things like, I guess, people skills is important when you're working with,
hugely important.
And research as well. I mean, there's a lot of it. A lot of time and effort must go with the makers of your films, of actually finding out information and Googling stuff and ringing people up and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and trawling through archives. So, we're quite a small team. So one of my, in-house producer, director, who works in my team, he does an awful lot himself. And, his work ethic is immense. People might think, oh, how glamorous and fun to go and direct shoots. Well, the other side of it,
we'll never know. Right.
How long did you give her?
It's a rather unflattering pause of Sally
Yeah.
as well, isn't it?
Shall I just pick up on?
Oh, you froze.
Froze, yeah.
It was just a really important moment then as well. You just
the winning numbers are.
You just said the other side of it is, I guess, perhaps the not so
the less glamorous side of the being on a shoot and meeting all these famous people is the amount of work. The better film is when you're prepared to really research, as you say, to trawl through the archives, to be in contact with all the people who are running the different archives, be it the BBC or ITV Sport or whoever it is. That takes a lot of time. And really, the best films are the ones that are, we say, painted, but they've got the best supporting archive for them, because that brings the, whatever they're talking about to life. So yes, people skills is a massive one too, massive, because you've often got to really convince these people to be in your film. And I would say that, all the people in my team have got amazing patience and empathy and understanding. Like at the moment, we're working with a lot of these old archive stories. We're dealing with a lot of old people. These are guys who were stars back in the 70s or 80s, but they're quite old now. And we've had to be really patient with them through COVID, for example. Some of them are scared to go out and shoot. Although we're being super safe and everything we're doing is right, they want to wait for their vaccine. We've got to understand that. We have to then go, okay, problem solving. How can we keep this machine rolling while we can't actually film? So that's when we'll go, we can work with archive, because we can get that, from ourselves, and we can research. Our planning, we can really be planned, we can really research. So it's all about finding that, sometimes it's about, especially through COVID, we've never been more challenged about being prepared. But yeah, people skills is huge, and you've got to be patient. So you've got to work out how to communicate well with people. I'd say that's massive.
Yeah. So Sam, same question for you. I guess there are people skills with an element of what you guys do, but also some of it, I guess, is editing skills and also, I guess, telling a story, but in a very different way to Sally's team.
Yeah, I think so. And there's so many skills that you see on a CV when you get sent CVs, and there's so many skills that producers that we have in quite an experienced team at the moment. But for the young people who are listening to this and watching this, I think there's so much behind what my creative team have in the locker that are quite natural and instinctive. It's a creative team, so it's about ideas. It's about being prepared to bring ideas to the table. It's about listening to other people. It's about collaborating and having those conversations and bouncing off each other, not being afraid to put a rubbish idea forward, knowing it will be knocked back, and having the resilience to put the next idea forward afterwards. And if you can be positive and unshackled, then I think an employer is going to be really excited to take you on board. And those skills, like editing, like storytelling, and writing, they will come as you learn next to people. I went to university and did a degree in TV, and I'm not really sure it was worth anything. I'm not sure really what I learned. And the most I learned was when I started to do my work experience. And, I started to be around people who were doing this day in, day out. And that taught me how to, learn those skills, but also hone my attitude to make me employable with, future employers.
How did you go about acquiring work experience, Sam? Was it just firing off lots of emails, or?
There was firing off a lot of emails. I mean, I was in a privileged position, and probably the only good thing that my university did offer me was they forced me to do a work experience placement in order to pass the course.
Yeah.
I sent off a few emails, but one person actually was a family friend who got back, who was a cameraman, who was at Outside Broadcast, and he just said, I know this up and coming company. They need someone to go and make the tea for them. And it was the classic old runner's job, which, isn't so as popular anymore, a bit more frowned upon, tea makers in your office. But I made terrible tea for about a year, really. And that was just an opportunity to be around and understand, what a vision mixer was, what a tape deck was, don't have them anymore, what the different pieces of software were and who the different roles were, and and when you go into TV, you might not necessarily say, well, I want to be a promo producer. You might be unclear about what those roles are, but by being around that environment, you get to learn what the different jobs are and the pros and cons and what fits your personality and style.
I guess you touched on a good point there as well. It's not necessarily just about learning what those roles are and developing some of those skills, but it's meeting people, right? So I don't know. I've found that quite often opportunities, there's a bit of luck involved in these opportunities, and you've got to be in kind of the right place at the right time. But if you've made an effort to do lots of work experience or kind of put your name out there, send a few emails, etc., then you never know quite when that opportunity may arise. And that's definitely been the case with me in the past. And yeah, then if you happen to be at the right place at the right time, then you might get a role for a short period. And if you're willing to put your hand to anything, then that might go from 1 week into 1 month into a short-term contract. And I guess keep applying yourself and keep kind of putting your hand up to say that you're up for doing these kind of things.
And that luck thing can be crazy. You can be, as an employer, I can be really busy and I can get a CV onto my desk, CV onto my desk, and I think, oh, I'm really short of someone. Oh, this CV's just landed. Oh, yeah, they're all right, aren't they? So you might want to send it 5 times to the same person. Depends what kind of person they are. But
yeah,
it's just that timing is also crucial as well.
I completely agree with that. And that's exactly what happened with one of the assistant producers who works on my team now. You could say the word pestered, but I couldn't, blame his perseverance because he kept emailing me and he was so polite. You can't argue with someone. If they're polite and they're respectful, 100%. You've got to just admire that. And exactly that, Sam. I thought, I've not got.
Oh, there we go.
Got anything to lose?
No, there might be an opportunity. Pardon?
You're back. Sorry. If you pause.
Keep going.
Keep going.
You're on a roll.
I'll keep nattering, and then hopefully this will edit me beautifully. So basically perseverance and just be polite, be respectful, and when you do get your opportunity, work your socks off. Yeah. No job should feel, you should have a can do, will do, anything attitude, because even if you only have a few months, if you have a brilliant few months and then disappear, if I suddenly need someone else, I'm going to go, who was that person who was prepared to do anything, worked really hard, never complained, had the perfect attitude? That's the person I'm going to call again. 100%. So,
Agreed. Anissa, so how did you get into the industry and into BT Sport?
It's quite a long one. So I would say, what's that phrase? You have to kiss a few frogs before you find your prince, don't you? So I actually left school and went to do an apprenticeship. It was a 1-year one, and it was just like a business admin apprenticeship, very basic. It just get me some office experience. I've never worked. Well, I worked 1 day before that, but let's not talk about that. I've never had a proper office job. So I did that 1 year, and then while I was there, I saw another apprenticeship for the BBC. It was like a degree apprenticeship, and they would basically fund my degree while I worked there. So I applied for it. Long story short, I got it, very luckily. And then while I was there, I learned about this team called Audience Research. And I learned very quickly that if you just email someone and ask them, can I meet you, that's the way you've got to do it. So I've been on that side that you guys are talking about, of just putting yourself out there. So I emailed this lady and I was like, I really want to learn about what you guys do. And then she was like, sure. She taught me it. I loved it. And then for about 1.5 years, I badgered my manager to put me into that team, because it was like a placement scheme where they kind of put you into different placements. So I badgered her for like 1.5 years, and then for my final placement, I got into that team. And while I was there, I learned that you can do audience research in sports. So I actually emailed a guy that I saw his name on the BBC website, the BBC Sport website. They do the live text every weekend, and I used to be a massive fan. I still am. So I just emailed this guy, and I was like, I know you guys do this on the weekend. Is there any way I can come up and shadow you? Just, can I do it? And he was like, yeah. And he gave me someone's name, and then he gave me someone's name, and then he gave me someone's name. And I just kept following it up, and eventually I just went up there once to Salford and just spent a day there, and I was like, I love this, and I just love sport. But
So this completely backs up everything that I guess Sally and Sam have said, really. Kind of persistence, being proactive, and being up for finding stuff out and meeting people has ended you getting.
Because I went up on a Saturday, I was like, I'll take my own time, don't have to do it in work time. I'll come up on the weekend, I'll just spend the day there and stuff, and it was great. I just sat there and watched football, and it was just amazing. But I didn't actually come into BT Sport until 2 years later after that, because for my role anyway, the jobs, it's not as easy as just to kind of email people and say, can I work there? You have to work your way through it, which is why I say you have to kiss a few frogs. So I worked at a BBC, and then I went to work for an agency for research, and then I went to work for Cartoon Network, still TV. And I picked up the skills from media side of things, and then the BT Sport job came up, and then I applied for it and made sure that my love for football showed through that, as well as my experience in media kind of thing.
You love for football, shame you haven't got a taste in tea. So look, we've only got a minute and a half left of this, so very quickly, what would be the kind of one piece of advice you would give someone trying to get into the sports industry? Sam, do you want to start?
Persistence. I think persistence. Yeah. Can I keep going? Curiosity, and just embrace culture and pop culture at the moment, and just be wise and just suck it all up and spit it all out to us old fogies when you youngsters come in and steal our jobs. So,
okay, Sally.
Yeah, I think persistence, absolutely, but then when you come in, to just show that you're a team player, and there's no place for lazy people. I'm afraid they'll get booted out as quickly as they come in. Just having that can-do attitude, and respecting of everybody, because you'll be working with people across the whole company. So
Okay, Anissa.
I would say ask questions and don't be afraid to reach out to people that you might not know. So on LinkedIn, I know some people might not like it, but I messaged quite a few people in the sports industry before I got the job, just to ask questions about what they do. And it worked for some of them, work didn't, but just try it.
Yeah. Look at that. That is timing for you. Might get cut out, but thanks so much for doing that. I really appreciate it.